Did Cassie jump in?
I don't know. It says it's recording.
And screen. Yeah, well, I give her a text.
Hey guys, it's Paolo. I just logged in as communications, so
Oh,
you
nice.
should be good to go now.
Oh,
So
Paolo
Omarys, I
here to
will.
save the day. So for
I
all
will-
of you guys that don't know Paolo here, he's our past president for NOMA, Connecticut. I have transitioned, there you go, Juan's the host, perfect. So he's come in to save the day. Thank you, Paolo.
My pleasure.
Teamwork makes the dream work. All right, there we go. Can you guys, wait, that work?
No, I don't see your screen.
Share. Okay,
There you go.
now you can see. Perfect. All right. So thank you everyone for making the time and inviting me to speak to you guys about, this little pop-up window is weird. Here we go. To speak to you guys today about my my role as a state building inspector, my path and how I got there. Full disclaimer, it's not as glamorous as it may seem for a lot of folks, but I know that with these I Am series, you guys have had a little bit of an exposure on other different professions. So I'm just trying to kind of keep this high level, and I want to leave enough room for a Q&A at the end. So I'm happy to answer any questions from anybody that you guys might have. So, and thank you to our sponsors, Shepley Bullfinch and Patricoin for these series. I think they're super important to have. So the questions that I'll be fielding today and responding to is, of course, who I am, what paths I took, what types of projects I worked on, and what does a state building inspector do and why. So I am a first-generation American. I actually grew up in New York City, and I've always had a passion for architecture, even as a young child. I grew up in public housing, so I really come a long way. You know, coming from immigrant parents, they really instilled in me a lot of kind of hard work ethic and really pursuing my passion. So I was really involved with architecture. I got my architecture's degree in Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York. And since then have been working with a lot of private offices, doing a lot of commercial work. Got my license a few years ago as an architect. And as I mentioned before, I am now starting to start my tenure as the new president of NOMA, Connecticut. So thank you, Juan, for setting this up. You and Cassie, these K-12 series are really important for us because we want to be able to kind of show you guys all the different fields and professions that there is in the architecture and engineering community. And as of recently, as of about 5 months ago, I became the first person of color to become the Connecticut State Building Inspector. So it was a really exciting achievement. And click here. So the way I got to where I got is, as I mentioned, I got my bachelor's degree in architecture. It was a 5-year degree. I know that Thaddeus spoke with some of the schools here as well about what the path is for being an architect. And in Connecticut specifically, there are only 2 types of people that can be appointed. It is a governor appointed position. So Governor Lamont appointed me as the new state building inspector. And the 2 qualifications are, you have to be either a licensed architect or a licensed professional engineer. So it could be fire protection engineer, electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, structural engineer, you know, any really engineering field. And you have to have at least 10 years of professional experience. And of course, background knowledge of building codes and regulations. So I have about 16 years of professional experience, lots of networking. So these kinds of events, I wish we could do them more in person. Virtual, as informal as it is, it helps us kind of really jump around the state more and more. But networking is really about who you know, just as much as what you know. And through networking and going through a lot of classes or continuing education courses to maintain my licensure, I've kind of met the right people along the way people that supported me, people that encouraged me, people that educated me, and really took me under their wing and really saw the benefits and the value and the experience that I had. So as an architect, and through that 10-year experience that I mentioned, you have to take on a variety of different experiences. And I know Thaddeus covered that in another presentation. So there's, design development, you work on construction documents, you do program sketching like this diagram here, and just really space planning, designs, creating spaces that work, and all the construction oversight that happens when the project goes into construction. But what kind of gets not missed, but not talked about as much, in that's a part of every component and every step that an architect and an engineer takes, is that through every phase and through every step of the design process, you have to constantly check back to the building codes. And the building codes are a set of books and documents and laws, essentially, that tell us how to build the building. It doesn't necessarily tell us what to build or how to design it, right? That's where the architecture and engineering field, the creativeness aspect comes into play. We create creative spaces. The building code tells us how to do that safely, how to make sure that the classrooms that you're in, the offices that you go to, the movie theaters that you go to, and you see those exit signs. We make sure that the building code is followed so that we know as designers that the spaces that we're building for the people that use it, they have the right amount of doors to exit. They have the right amount of stairs that are protected to make sure that in an event of a fire or an emergency, you guys have a safe route to get out. So throughout every phase of our design, from beginning to end, and even through construction, we're constantly checking back on the code and making sure that we're not building something that's unsafe or designing something that's unsafe. So just a few images just for fun, just to talk a little bit of some of the architectural history that I have and some of the projects that I've worked on, just to kind of give you guys an idea of my path, my journey, what I've worked on, what exposure I had, and kind of all of this that kind of led to the culmination of where I am today. So one of my very first projects as an intern, which we don't like that term anymore these days, but as an emerging professional, right out of my bachelor's degree and during my bachelor tenure at Pratt, I worked with a small firm in New York City. And I worked on mostly model building at that stage, but this is one of the first projects that I was able to see during construction, and it's the African Burial Ground National Monument. And it was a really exciting project to really be a part of. I just want to go quickly through these because I know we only have a few minutes. I want to leave room for Q&A. Once I moved to Connecticut, the West Haven train station. So these are just kind of highlight pictures, probably projects that you guys have seen at least around the state here and there. And if not, you'll see it and you go, oh wait, I know a person that worked on that. The West Haven train station was one of the first new construction ground up projects that I worked on construction documents, which is all the drawings and creating the set of drawings and documents for the project. I had a hand in the Sandy Hook Elementary School. So the firm I worked for at Svigals, they did the designing. I had just started with the firm and I was tasked with a lot of the millwork detailing, the design of the library, casework, the main offices, the corridors and all that stuff. And anything that's millwork related, I kind of got my hand wet or my feet wet and my hands busy on helping with the construction documents for that project. The new Ronald McDonald House, which is right across the street from the Yale Children's Hospital in New Haven. This was also a brand new building. And this one was really special because it really serves the communities of families that, through donations, through those Ronald McDonald, Happy Meals, it funds families who can't afford a stay like at a hotel to be close to their sick children and loved ones seeking treatment. This one was a project that through design and construction management or administration I was involved with. Interior fit outs for Yale. These are office fit outs. And again, it's a wide array of different project experiences, and every firm that you might work for has a different focus and specialties, but I really took the opportunity throughout my career to really try to get exposed to as many different conditions and projects as possible. And one of the latest ones was laboratory. So I kind of had my hand in a lot of different types of projects. So this is a new interior office renovation for Halda Therapeutics, and really trying to think outside the box and how can we make laboratories cooler and more fun and exposed, so we can kind of really celebrate the work that they do. And from there, like I said, this was just a few highlights of a lot of the projects that I've worked on in the span of 16 years. And as I mentioned, that code enforcement and code research really ties a ribbon through all of the different steps that we take through design. And as licensed architects and engineers, we have to often take continuing education classes, which are similar to this. You sit down for an hour or two, depending on what it is, and you get a credit hour for learning something different. Times change, technology changes, energy efficiency methods are always improving. So they want to make sure, just like doctors, that we are up to date with the current trends and the new changes. And in one of those continuing education seminars, again, knowing the right people and being at the right place at the right time, I was connected with the director of the state Department of Administrative Services, and he pretty much roped me into this new position, which I was honored and really excited to take, because it's a really big position. So this role is very similar to what a local building department would do. So in your town, you would have a local building department. They make sure that during construction, the contractors are making sure that they're building the building the way they should, so that it'll stand up, it won't fall down on you. They make sure that they're following the design drawings that the architect and the engineers developed, and making sure that, again, it's checked against the building code and that it's meeting all the safety standards. So what I didn't know a state building inspector does, we don't look at all the buildings in the entire state. We focus mostly just on state-owned property. So schools, the Department of Labor, Department of Transportation, so the train stations, the universities, we oversee those larger projects. And what I didn't know is that the state building inspector is also involved in all of the elevator, not maintenance, but the inspections. So every single elevator in the entire state of Connecticut, there's over, I believe it's 19,000 elevators, escalators, ski lifts. All of that is inspected either annually or every 18 months by a division that the state building inspector runs. Now, they're pretty self-managing, but we oftentimes have to deal with accidents and issues that happen in buildings. And we issue certificates. So anytime you're in an elevator and you see a certificate like this is older, just a couple years old, but this essentially says that this elevator has been inspected by the state, it is in safe operating condition, and it has a certificate that is up to date. So we are continually looking at that and making sure that if an elevator isn't safe, we shut it down and the owner repairs it, and then we go back and reopen it. Same thing with boilers, all the boilers in commercial buildings, and this doesn't have to do with residences, right? So no single family or two family houses, it's just anything that is a public space. Especially the high pressure boilers. Again, it's a safety issue. We inspect it and make sure that, again, these boilers are operating and that because they're pressurized, they don't cause fires or an explosion that can, again, affect life safety. And the codes that we use, that designers use, are reissued every 3 years, so that, again, we're making sure that our codes and our state buildings and local buildings are safe and up to date, And with all the energy crisis and climate change that we have, we want to make sure that the buildings that we build are also keep us warmer and doesn't emit or lose a lot of energy. And we issue exemptions. Sometimes there are buildings that may not be able to meet some of the requirements. So as a state building inspector, that's one of the sole responsibilities that I have, is that if we want projects to build, we want projects to happen. We don't want a project to die because they have a challenge that they can't meet. So the idea is that we look at the situation, and if there's a special circumstance, we allow like a waiver or kind of a get out of jail free pass in a way, and says, you know what, this is not exactly how we should build it, but we understand that there are some special constraints that may not allow that designer or owner to do something, but we want that project to happen. So as long as it's not a huge safety issue, we'll sign off a letter and allow that project to move forward with some of the little discrepancies. And the why that I get asked a lot is, it's a lot of regulations and building codes. And I also often get asked, why did I become the state building inspector? I took this position. And the real reason is why. I ask why a lot. Why are we doing this? Why do we have to do this? Why do we need all these sprinklers? Why do we need all these stair ratings? Why do we need this? Throughout my entire career, or even as a child, I always asked why. I always pushed the boundaries. I always challenged the status quo. And I did this because of my continual desire to learn, to understand, and to teach. And by me understanding why certain things are the way that they are, why do we need 2-hour fire rated stairs in a 4-story building, is to make sure that everybody has 2 hours to get out and be safe and not get caught in a fire. So with that, I also have a very technical mindset. I really love puzzles. I love solving puzzles. I love the construction detailing part of architecture and kind of figuring out how buildings get together and they come together. Like I said, I enjoy helping, and nothing is better than working at the state and your desire is to help people, because that's what we're here for, to make the state better. And one of the biggest reasons was the fact that I have an opportunity to make change. As a state building inspector and as a person of color, I have a seat at the table at the state, working a few steps below the governor, and having an opportunity to not just follow the rules, but an opportunity to make the rules. And having that opportunity to use that and see what do we need as a society, as a community, as individuals, and seeing what the state needs and being able to be a part of those conversations and sit around the table with really creative individuals and have those conversations about what it is that the state really needs and try to push for that kind of change. So, I mean, that's really all I have today. I wanted to kind of keep it open for Q&A and see if you guys have any questions.
Thank you so much. This was really, really eye-opening. I actually didn't even think what you said. It never occurred to me that, of course, you get an opportunity to help shape the rules that govern what you do, which is really awesome. I think some of my kids had some questions. If you have questions, I know it's kind of, why don't you come up if you feel comfortable, right? Come up here and ask them so we can see you. Otherwise, you can just state them loudly enough that she can hear you. Oh, come on. You're like the loudest person in this shop. Let's go. All right.
It's a good networking opportunity.
It is a good networking opportunity, yes.
You can go closer if you want.
Yeah, say hi. Okay. That's probably good, because otherwise you're gonna cut off. Oh, you're gonna lose the top of your head there. There you go.
All right. So do you ever feel that you don't have like a voice, or like you aren't being heard by the contractors when you're talking to them?
Yes and no. So if you haven't noticed, I can be pretty loud. And at the same time, though, especially I have a young looking face and I've always had this. So it always comes off like she's too young. She's a woman. She doesn't really know anything. And oftentimes there were early in my career where they were talking over me to like a partner that was with me at those construction meetings. And what helps is when you work for a firm that has leadership that advocates for you and makes sure that you have a voice, and they say, no, ask her. She's the project designer. She's the project architect. She can answer the questions. Having that helps because then it really does shift the conversation and helps the contractors really take you seriously. And the other thing is also having a mutual respect for them too. And I've learned that was the best advice that I got in my career is don't try, as much as I hate giving this advice, don't try to push too much because then it comes off like, who is she? She thinks she knows better than me. And it's not really about that. This is building takes a village, just like raising children. You need designers, you need contractors, and you need building officials. We all work together as a team. So if you show each other that mutual respect and you ask them for their advice and say, hey, I noticed this isn't really exactly how we drew it. Is there a different way? Or, hey, I noticed this isn't, really working. What do you suggest? And when you guys start to show that kind of respect to each other, we're all human, and we ask those contractors to be involved in the conversation and offer solutions, it really helps to level it because now it becomes a dialogue. And they go, oh, well, I was thinking like, oh, she's asking my opinion. This is great, right? It's about showing respect. And when you give respect, you get respect back.
That was a great question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah, come on up. Oh my God, come on up. Again, how is it the loudest people in the shop are afraid to stand up and ask a question?
Really stupid though.
There's no such
There are
thing.
no stupid questions. Remember, I ask why a lot.
Hi. Wait, hold on. Hi, how are you?
Hi, good.
Okay. Do you ever have to renew your architect license? Like license? Yeah.
Yes, so the continuing education classes that I mentioned, we have to take, every state is different. So in Connecticut, we have to do about 18 hours every year, plus 12 more hours that are geared towards specific subjects like more health and safety. So, and these classes aren't like your typical classrooms. It's not like you're sitting, sometimes you're sitting there for 8 hours, but oftentimes it's product reps that come in to talk to you about a new material or a new product. They buy the office lunch, so you get to sit and listen to them. But at the same time, you're learning and you submit those certificates. So every time you complete an hour or a class, you submit a certificate. It's all online. As long as you take those 18 hours a year and you pay your renewal fee for your certificate, for your license is renewed every year.
Okay. And another question. How often do you have problems with your clients?
So as architects and anyone, building officials or contractors, it's a customer service based industry. So while sometimes, you kind of use the mantra, the customer's always right, it's also our job as architects, because we do have a license to make sure that we meet the code and that we're building safe spaces. And we oftentimes, it's our job to educate the clients because not everybody knows what it takes to build a building and what you need. And oftentimes they may push back and they say, I don't want to put an elevator in our building. And we go, well, that's okay. We understand that that may not fit in your budget. Maybe it's because it does add a lot of more money to your project. But we try to explain to them and educate them about why they need it and say, well, we really need it because we could have people in wheelchairs and they need equal access to, and they need to be able to go to all the spaces that we need to go to. So it is, again, it's that conversation. There are always going to be disagreements. It's just really learning how to have that conversation and help them learn why. And if not, they send me an application and say why they don't want to do it. And I say, no, you can't do that.
Thank you for answering my question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I have any other questions? Here's some murmuring in the back. Are there questions? Oh, come on.
He actually does have a question.
I don't.
Yeah.
Will someone else ask the question then? Hold on. This might be a bit.
Will. William, go. Let's go. It's extra credit. Want me to ask you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, whatever. I'm just.
Hey, we apparently have representatives today.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I can't read your handwriting, Addie. Do contractors ever try to change your original design? Exactly.
Not usually. Not usually, because I mean, they might ask or offer a solution to do something better. They focus more on how to build things, and they don't really do design changes, because oftentimes when a contractor takes a project and takes a design, they have to put a price on it. So they'll say, I can build this for $3 million. You know, if I'm going to build your school, maybe it's $10 million, right? I can do this for $10 million. If they start changing things that cost more, who's going to pay for that? They're not going to pay for it. The owner is not going to pay for it. The architect's not going to pay for it. So they oftentimes won't do that. What they might do is they might substitute a material. So instead of, you know, say maybe in this classroom you had, it used to be wood floors, but the cost of wood floors was so expensive, and they may ask for a substitute and say, hey, instead of real wood, can we do a vinyl kind of wood that's kind of popular now these days? It has you know, better cost, otherwise your prices are going to go up. So they may make suggestions, and we try to work with them and the owner and their budget, but not so much the design. The owner and the architect have a little bit more of that discussion early on.
You said I can't read your handwriting. I did. Wow.
Anyone on the side? Any questions? Yeah, Meyer, come up.
Oh, mine is my wonderful question.
Hello.
Hi.
What is your favorite building that you've worked on?
Ooh.
So I want to say the Ronald McDonald House that I showed you guys earlier. And the reason for that is two reasons. So I grew up in public housing. So anything that has to do with multifamily housing really excites me, because I want to make sure that whoever lives in those spaces have the same quality of materials as everybody else. And two, the fact that they serve families that can't afford, you know, hotel stays and all that stuff. And it was so colorful. If you Google Ronald McDonald House, you'll see some images. They have a website. It's just bright colors on the walls. And it just made me feel so good, because at the end of the day, you have families that are dealing with children that have really, really chronic and critical diseases and illnesses at the hospital. And when they go into this building, it feels like an oasis, like they're escaping that hospital scene and they're going into this really quiet sanctuary. And it was just a great group of people to work for. Thanks.
Another question.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's your least favorite building that you've worked on?
All right, let me think about this. Hold on. This has been recorded, right? Wait.
This is a safe classroom.
I joke. I kid. So I'm not gonna say it's my least favorite, but I can say what my least favorite project type is.
Yes, that sounds good.
And that has to be and this is this is my personal opinion. Take no offense to any designers who like this type of field. So that's my disclaimer. So my favorite's not really a lot of laboratory work. It's, even though I'm a technical person, there's just a lot of science and chemistry and equipment that chemists use that I learned a lot. Let me be honest, I enjoy learning. So with every project I learned something new, and that always helps fulfill me. But there is a lot to learn about their equipment or chemical fume hoods, snorkels, and all these special systems that they use. And it's just really hard to make a laboratory space very glamorous. So, but it was a nice challenge, and we gave them blue ceilings and try to make it a little bit different and more exciting for them. But I said, I'll do it if I have to, but I prefer not to work on labs. I'd rather work on like apartment housing and those types of projects.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, Natalie, come on up.
How'd you know what like field in architecture you wanted to do? Like when you were going through college, how'd you know, oh, I want to do this? Or like, how'd you know that you wanted to do like commercial or like big residential projects rather than like smaller, like?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, because much like when you're in high school and you're trying to figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life, right? And kind of what career do I want to go? What things do I like? It's a lot of that is the same when you're going through your professional degree. What I did know at first was that I did not want to work for a really, really large architecture company, like one that had 100 employees, just because you hear a lot of, hearsay that and stories about the intern or the person right out of college gets stuck doing one thing all the time. And I had a close friend of mine who worked for a really large firm. He was stuck building models, which was really fun the first year, but he was there for like 4 years and he was still just building models, and he wasn't getting exposed to the drawings and the detailing, the construction site visits and all of that. Like he wasn't exposed to it. So I knew really early that I wanted to work for a smaller firm that did a bunch of different types of things. And that way I rose up the ranks a lot faster, because when you have a smaller firm, they throw you into a lot of different things. Like I managed my first construction project by myself without my boss or the partner in the firm when I was about 5 years in or 6 years into my career, which is unheard of in a larger company. So I'm here walking around with this baby face at a construction site with these guys, checking how they're building the building and making sure they're doing it right. So that I knew I wanted to do. And then as you work more and more on different types of projects, and then you realize, wow, I really enjoyed this type of project. And you won't know if you're going to like something unless you try it.
Also, do you think being a woman and a person of color affected going through college or in certain architecture firms? Or have you had?
So for me personally, not for college. I went to college in New York City, so there was already a somewhat of a mix of diverse students there already. I do, however, have a close friend of mine who had the complete opposite experience, and we were in the same university, and she's actually the NOMA national president. Now I'm just the NOMA Connecticut president. So right now she's the national president. She was my college roommate, and she was one of 2 Black women in her class. And the first thing her instructor told her and her classmate was to stand up freshman year in front of her design studio. And he said, "Do you see these 2?" to the class. "These 2 are not going to make it. They're not going to be architects." Oh yeah, straight up. And that drove her passion to really prove everybody wrong, because that is what, at least for NOMA, that's what we're trying to change, is that yes, we can. Yes, we are. Yes, we're just as capable and able as everybody else. And then coming to Connecticut, the only difference was that, there isn't that much of a diverse population. So there's some, but I realized really quickly how not that I was treated differently, I felt different. And I felt like I had more to prove, whether or not it was said. And I felt that I needed to work harder and kind of have a little bit of a wall, a little bit, because I wanted to make sure that they didn't think less of what my capabilities were. So it was a challenge, but you persevere and you push through. And you meet wonderful people like Paulo and the guys here in Juan at the NOMA group. And once you have that community, you build each other up.
That was a great question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? No, I have a question. Actually, it has to do with Pratt. So a lot of my seniors here trying to figure out where they want to go to school. One question we've been getting a lot is this more of a school focused on design? Is this more of a school focused on technical skills, or is it somewhat in between? Besides that terrible professor you just mentioned, what was your experience at Pratt in terms of, is it more design based, is it more technical, or what do you believe that was a good mix of both?
Yeah, and I can only speak towards Pratt, but I think a lot of the architecture degrees focus solely, not solely, but primarily on design. And there is a variety of technical classes you have to take. So very much like in high school, you have like your math and your science and your English and kind of like your base core functions. But so we still have that at college, but then you have some specialty classes, like you have to learn how to, so there's some math involved. So there's learning how to calculate steel beams and how to size a steel beam. Even though you're not a structural engineer, you have to learn about the different structural systems, because much like a general doctor, right? The bones are your structure, right? The bones are what hold your body up. Much like structure and beams, whether it's steel or concrete or wood, that's what holds a building up. So while you don't have to know everything, they do teach you the basics about that. And same thing with the skin or the envelope of the building, as well as mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. It's mostly just 1 or 2 semesters or 1 or 2 classes of each of those topics, but throughout the entire 5 years of my bachelor's degree, you take a design studio every semester. So that's 10 different design studios, 10 different projects that you work on, and each semester is a different type of building. One building was a skyscraper, and we had to build a giant model of a giant tower. One year it would be a library. 1 year it could be a school. So you are exposed to a lot of different design aspects. Depending on the university, they're either more imaginary design, like they design things that don't have real locations. So it's like really, really imaginary to really stretch the boundaries of your creativity. And others like Pratt actually pick real locations. And they say, here's a site, here's a location, design a library to fit here. And how would you use the neighborhood and the context to influence your design?
All right, cool. Unfortunately, I do have to let them go to 6th period, I suppose.
Oh no!
If anyone has one more question, we can fit it in.
Try it. Go first talking. You're good at this.
Now they're really trying to get out of 6th period.
Go and probably after. Go.
Why? Well, how about, like, we don't want to waste her time either, right? So if there's a good question, let's ask it. Otherwise, thank you so much for everything today. This was absolutely wonderful. I'm so happy to hear from you. And you are 100% an inspiration to the students here. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys. Nice to meet you all.